My name is Mariel Parker. I'm 30 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. From the outside, my life looks pretty solid. I work as a marketing manager for a mid-sized tech company downtown, and just a few weeks ago, I got promoted after leading one of the most successful product campaigns the company has ever launched. People at work congratulate me, my boss trusts me, and my paycheck finally makes me feel like I'm standing on my own 2 feet. But here's the part that stings. None of that ever seems to matter when it comes to my family. Before I dive in, let me pause for a second. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one left out of the story, this channel is for you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, because stories like mine aren't just about pain, they're about finding your own power, and maybe you'll see pieces of yourself here. Back to me. It was mid-December in Austin, the kind of day where the winter air still carried a warm Texas sun, but the evenings got sharp and cold. I had a suitcase half-packed on my bed and a pile of carefully wrapped Christmas gifts stacked by the wall. I'd spent weeks picking them out, toys for my niece and nephew, something special for my dad, even a set of delicate glass ornaments for my mom. Every bow was tied with the hope that maybe, just maybe, this year they would look at me differently. I checked the time on my phone. My flight to Charlotte was in less than 12 hours. The idea of going back there always made my stomach twist. Every December, it was the same. Fly across the country, show up at my parents' crowded house, smile through the noise, and pretend not to notice how invisible I'd become over the years. But this year was supposed to feel different. I told myself I wouldn't let the past crush me again. "Mariel, you're 30, for God's sake," I muttered to myself as I folded another sweater into the suitcase. "You can handle one more Christmas." I walked through my apartment, glancing at the framed photos on the shelves. Most of them were of me and my friends, people who actually cared enough to show up, to celebrate milestones with me. Only one picture had my family in it: my sister Olivia, her husband Daniel, their kids Ella and Noah, and my parents standing proudly beside them. I was there too, somewhere off to the side, like an afterthought. I stopped and studied that photo. Olivia's smile was wide, the kids' faces glowing, Mom's arm draped protectively around her oldest daughter. My father stood tall behind them. And me? I looked like someone who had wandered into a stranger's family portrait. A sudden heaviness settled in my chest. Why was I still chasing after their approval? Why was I still packing gifts and booking flights like some ritual sacrifice? I opened my phone and scrolled through old text messages. Nothing from Mom. Nothing from Dad. Olivia's last message had been months ago, and it wasn't even directed at me. It was part of a group chat about the kids' soccer games. They never asked how work was going, never asked about my life in Austin, never asked if I was happy. I sighed, pressing my palms against the countertop in the kitchen. The silence of my apartment contrasted with the chaos I knew awaited me in Charlotte. My sister's kids running through the house, Daniel bragging about his new project at work, Aunt Carol's sharp laugh echoing from the living room, and me, sitting quietly on the sidelines pretending to belong. Still, hope is a stubborn thing. I zipped up the suitcase and whispered to myself, "This year has to be different. It just has to." I didn't know then that the hope I carried would be shattered again, but in a way that would finally push me past the point of no return. And with that thought, I placed my suitcase by the door, ready for the flight that would take me back into the storm I kept trying to escape. As I placed my suitcase by the door in Austin, my mind couldn't help but drift backward. 7 years ago, Christmas Eve in Charlotte, that was the first time the words "no room" cut straight through me. I was 23 then, fresh out of college, excited and nervous about stepping into adulthood. My Honda Civic was stuffed with wrapped gifts and a few winter coats, and I'd driven 15 hours straight from Texas just to be with my family. I still remember pulling into my parents' driveway, snow crunching under my tires, lights strung along the roofline. For a moment, I felt like I was coming home to warmth. Inside, though, the house was bursting. Luggage piled in the foyer, shoes scattered everywhere, children's toys across the living room. My sister Olivia was glowing with pregnancy, Ella was still months away from being born, and Daniel's parents had flown in from Ohio. Even his sister was there, her voice carrying across the house like she'd lived there forever. I tried to ignore the sting in my chest and told myself, this is family. This is supposed to feel full, not empty. Dinner that night was loud, crowded, laughter spilling across the table. I smiled, passed the mashed potatoes, listened to my father and Daniel's dad debate football. The whole time, I held on to one comforting thought. Once the dishes were done, I'd retreat upstairs to my old bedroom, my safe place, the room with posters still tacked to the wall from my teenage years. But when I finally climbed the staircase, my heart dropped. The door to my room was shut, and when I opened it, I froze. Suitcases were sprawled across the bed, clothes neatly folded on my old dresser, a pair of slippers tucked beside the nightstand. It smelled like someone else's perfume. "Mom," I called down the hallway, "why is all this stuff in my room?" She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, a dish towel in her hands. Without even looking up, she said, "Oh, honey, we gave that room to Daniel's parents. They need somewhere comfortable." My throat went dry. "Okay, then where am I supposed to sleep?" My dad's voice floated from the recliner downstairs. "Couch is already taken by Daniel's sister." I blinked, waiting for someone to laugh, to tell me they were joking. But Mom just shrugged. "You should have thought about that before coming. You can figure something out." "Figure something out?" My voice cracked. "This is my home." "Mariel," Mom snapped softly, as if embarrassed by my tone. "Don't make a scene. We're all trying to enjoy Christmas." For a moment, I just stood there, gripping the banister, heat rising to my face. My chest felt hollow, like the walls of that house had suddenly rejected me. I whispered, "So there's really nowhere for me?" Mom finally looked at me, her expression cold. "Maybe you should stay with a friend tonight. It'll be easier that way." The words punched harder than I expected. Easier? For who? For them? For me? I stumbled back into the hall, blinking fast so nobody would see the tears forming. Downstairs, Olivia's laughter rang out as Daniel told a story. No one noticed me slip out the front door, my boots crunching against the icy driveway. My hands shook as I called Rachel, my old high school friend who still lived in town. "Hey, Rach, I know it's Christmas Eve, but could I crash with you tonight?" Her voice softened immediately. "Of course you can. Are you okay?" I lied through a tight throat. "Yeah, just house is too full." By the time I got to her apartment, the dam had broken. I collapsed onto her couch, tears spilling fast and hot, sobs I couldn't hold back. Rachel brought me a blanket and sat beside me until my breathing slowed. "They kicked you out, didn't they?" she finally asked. I buried my face in the pillow. "They didn't even think twice, like I was disposable." Rachel squeezed my hand. "You don't deserve that. You're their daughter." I stared at the ceiling all night, replaying the scene over and over. The way my mother dismissed me, the way my father didn't even look up, how Olivia never even came upstairs to ask if I was okay. For the first time, I realized I was the outsider in my own family. The next morning, I forced myself back to the house for Christmas breakfast. I thought maybe someone would apologize, maybe they'd realize how badly they'd hurt me. But when I walked in, it was as if nothing had happened. Daniel's parents greeted me warmly from my room. Olivia handed me a plate of pancakes, and Mom asked me to help clear the table. No one acknowledged the night before. I smiled weakly, played along, laughed at the right times. But inside, something had shifted. That Christmas, at 23, a quiet voice inside me whispered a truth I didn't want to face. They will never see you the way you want them to. You will always be the extra, the one without a seat, the one without a room. It would take me years to accept it, but that night in Charlotte was the beginning. The first crack in the illusion that family would always mean belonging. The hum of the airplane faded hours ago, but my stomach was still knotted when the taxi pulled into my parents' neighborhood. Charlotte in December had a different kind of chill than Texas, sharp, damp, the kind that sneaks through your coat. As we turned onto Maplewood Lane, the sight of my parents' driveway made my chest tighten. Every space was already crammed with cars. Olivia's silver SUV, Daniel's parents' rental, even Aunt Carol's old sedan. It looked less like a family gathering and more like a convention. I stepped out, clutching the strap of my suitcase with one hand and balancing two oversized gift bags in the other. Each bow and ribbon I'd tied back in Austin now felt foolish, like a child showing up with crayons to a business meeting. The front door was unlocked, just like always during the holidays. I pushed it open, and the house swallowed me whole. Warm air thick with the smell of turkey and cinnamon, voices colliding from every room. "Mariel's here!" someone called out, though no one paused long enough to actually greet me. I stood there a moment, half smiling, waiting for a hug that never came. "Perfect timing," Mom's voice rang from the kitchen. "Can you set the table? Use the good china, and don't forget the crystal glasses." "Hi to you too, Mom," I muttered under my breath, shifting the weight of the gift bags. In the kitchen, Olivia was juggling Ella on her hip while stirring a pot on the stove. She glanced up at me briefly, then turned to scold Noah for running too close to the hot pan. Daniel lounged in the living room, a beer in hand, his voice carrying over the football game. His father laughed at something on TV, and his mother was already giving Mom unsolicited advice about the turkey. "Where should I put these?" I asked, raising the gift bags. "Just under the tree," Mom said, barely glancing at me before turning back to the oven. I crouched by the Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, sliding the bags under the lowest branches. The lights blinked red and green, but my reflection in one of the ornaments looked pale, almost ghostly. At dinner, the dining room was crowded to bursting. I ended up wedged between my dad on one side and Daniel's sister on the other, pressed so tightly my elbows brushed theirs whenever I lifted my fork. Conversation flowed around me like a current I couldn't swim against. "So, Daniel," Dad began, leaning forward with interest. "How's work going?" Daniel smiled proudly. "Actually, I just got tapped to lead a new IT project next quarter. Big promotion, great opportunity." "That's wonderful," his mother beamed. "We always knew you'd climb the ladder quickly." For the next 20 minutes, the spotlight never left him. Olivia chimed in about how hard he worked, Mom gushed about how proud she was of her son-in-law, and Dad asked detailed questions about the project. I chewed slowly, waiting, hoping. Finally, Daniel's mom turned to me. "And what about you, Mariel? What are you up to these days?" I felt a spark of relief. "I actually got promoted too. I'm managing a whole new marketing campaign for—" "Oh, that's nice," she interrupted, already glancing back at Daniel. "But it's not quite the same as real management work, is it? Anyway, Daniel, tell us about the travel this project will require." The spark died in my chest. My fork clinked against the plate as I set it down, heat rushing to my cheeks. Mom didn't defend me. Dad didn't even look at me. Olivia leaned over to wipe Ella's mouth, not bothering to meet my eyes. I forced a smile, staring down at the mashed potatoes like they might open up and swallow me. Inside, the ache was familiar. I was here, but not really here. Halfway through dessert, someone laughed about childhood memories. "Remember when Olivia stayed up trying to catch Santa?" Mom chuckled, reaching over to squeeze her shoulder. "She was always so determined." I tried to join in. "Yeah, I did that too. I hid behind the couch when I was 6. "Did you?" Mom frowned, tilting her head as though she genuinely couldn't recall. "I don't remember that." She turned back to Olivia with a laugh. Anyway, Olivia was always such a spirited child. The room roared with laughter again. My story had already evaporated into the air, unnoticed. I sipped my water, the glass trembling slightly in my hand. Every year, I told myself things might be different. Every year, I came back, hoping for a moment of recognition. And every year, I was proven wrong. As the plates cleared and people drifted toward the living room, I stayed seated, staring at the crumbs on my plate. Around me, chairs scraped, voices overlapped, the Christmas tree sparkled. But in my chest, the hollowness deepened. I wasn't just visiting a house full of people. I was visiting a house where my presence had become optional. The clatter of silverware and overlapping voices filled the dining room, but for me, the noise only sharpened the silence I carried inside. I'd barely touched my turkey, and my glass of water had grown warm in my hand. Dad leaned across the table toward Daniel, his eyes shining. "So, tell me more about that new project. Sounds like a real game changer." Daniel chuckled modestly. "Well, it's a big team, a lot of responsibility. The company trusts me to lead, so yeah, it's exciting." Olivia squeezed his arm, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. "He works so hard. Honestly, I don't know how he balances everything." "Don't be modest," Mom chimed in, pride thick in her voice. "Not everyone gets promoted so quickly. That takes talent." I swallowed hard, the words pressing into my chest like stones. I had earned a promotion, too, one that had taken late nights, impossible deadlines, endless grit. But nobody asked. Nobody cared. I tried anyway. "Actually," I said, forcing brightness into my tone, "my company just trusted me with a new campaign. It's national scale, really challenging, but—" "Did you try the cranberry sauce, Mariel?" Mom cut me off without even realizing. "Pass that down to her, would you?" The bowl landed in front of me before I could finish. Heat flared in my cheeks. I wanted to scream, "Why won't you listen?" Instead, I spooned some sauce onto my plate, hands trembling. Daniel's mother leaned toward Olivia. "And how are the kids doing in school?" "Oh, Ella's teacher says she's reading above grade level already," Olivia said proudly. "Noah's got so much energy, he's practically the star of his soccer team." "That's wonderful," Mom beamed. "You've done such a good job with them." I glanced at my father, hoping for some acknowledgement. But he was laughing at Noah, who was now balancing a dinner roll on his head to the delight of everyone around him. I let out a quiet laugh too, though it felt empty. Inside, my chest was tightening with that familiar ache, the kind that made me wonder if I was slowly disappearing right there at the table. Dessert came out. Pecan pie, Olivia's favorite. I cut myself a small slice and waited for someone, anyone, to look at me. "So, Mariel," Daniel's sister said suddenly, maybe out of politeness, "do you still live in Texas?" The table went silent for a beat. All eyes shifted to me, as though the question itself was odd. "Yes," I said carefully. "I live in Austin. I've been there for years now. Work keeps me busy, but I really love the city." "That's nice," she said vaguely, before turning back to Daniel to ask about his travel schedule. The spotlight swung away, and just like that, I was gone again. The laughter grew louder, conversations overlapping until I felt like I was drowning. Every time I opened my mouth, another story about Olivia's kids or Daniel's career cut me off. I stabbed at the pie with my fork, the sweetness bitter on my tongue. I remembered the picture frame I had packed as a gift for Mom, carefully crafted with photos of us together. I'd wrapped it with trembling hands, praying it might spark something, a memory, a smile, a flicker of pride. But right now, I wondered if it would matter at all. "Remember when Olivia used to line up her dolls on the couch and pretend she was teaching a class?" Mom said, her eyes soft with nostalgia. "Yes," Olivia laughed. "I was such a little boss." "You always were determined," Dad agreed. "You were born to lead." The words cut sharp. I opened my mouth, desperate. "I used to do that too, remember? With my stuffed animals, "Oh, Mariel," Mom interrupted, with a dismissive chuckle. "You were always the quiet one. You liked hiding away with your books." The table erupted in more laughter, not unkind but careless, like my memories didn't matter, like my childhood had been erased. My chest burned. I felt like I was 8 years old again, invisible in my own home. I forced myself to breathe, blinking fast so no one would see the tears forming. If they noticed at all, they would probably mistake it for allergies. I tried to steady my voice. "I remember one Christmas when I stayed up all night trying to catch Santa. Dad, you found me asleep behind the couch." Dad frowned, searching his memory. "Did you? I don't recall that." "Of course you don't," I whispered, more to myself than to him. The noise of the table swelled around me again, swallowing my words whole. Finally, as the plates were cleared, I pushed back my chair. "I'll help with dishes," I offered automatically. "Good," Mom said, already stacking plates in her arms. "You know where everything goes?" Of course I did. I always did. In the kitchen, I stood by the sink, hands plunged into hot, soapy water. Behind me, the laughter carried from the dining room. I could hear Olivia telling another story, Daniel chiming in, Mom's voice rising above them all with pride. I scrubbed a plate until my fingers ached, my reflection wavering in the suds. The sting in my chest had turned to something else now, something sharper, harder. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. As I dried the last dish and set it in the cabinet, I promised myself, if they couldn't see me tonight, they would never see me again. The next morning, the house buzzed with its usual holiday chaos. Kids tearing through wrapping paper, Daniel narrating football scores from the living room, Olivia already bragging about how much her children deserved everything Santa brought them. I sat quietly near the tree, my heart pounding as I reached for the one gift I'd agonized over. A simple box, carefully wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon. Inside was something I'd made with my own hands. A wooden picture frame I'd sanded and painted myself, with photos tucked inside. Me and Mom baking cookies when I was 8, a candid shot of her laughing at one of Dad's jokes, and a recent picture of me in Austin I'd hoped might remind her I was still here, still trying. I held it tightly, my palms sweating. This will matter, I told myself. This has to matter. When the pile of gifts began to dwindle, I cleared my throat. "Mom," I said softly, offering the box across the couch. "This one's for you." She looked up, distracted, still halfway through a conversation with Olivia about school applications for Ella. She took the gift absent-mindedly, tugging at the ribbon. Inside, the frame gleamed under the Christmas lights. My chest swelled, ready for the warmth in her eyes, the gasp of recognition, maybe even tears, and instead she blinked at it, her smile polite and thin. "Oh, a frame," I forced myself to explain. "I made it myself, and I printed some old photos I thought you'd like. See, that's the Christmas when you taught me how to roll pie crust." Mom's eyes barely skimmed the pictures before she set it on the coffee table, the way someone sets down a catalog they're finished with. "That's nice, honey. Thank you." Then she turned back to Olivia. "Now, Liv, you were saying about Ella's reading level?" My throat closed. The frame sat there, untouched, the ribbon half dangling off the side like a forgotten ornament. Olivia leaned forward, smiling at Mom. "Yeah, Ella's already reading books 2 grades above. Her teacher says she's a natural." "That's wonderful!" Mom gushed, her voice bright with pride. "You must be so proud." The room moved on without me. I sat there, my gift on the table like an afterthought, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Every part of me screamed for recognition, for Mom to turn back, to pick it up again, to say she loved it, that she remembered those moments with me, too. But she didn't. No one did. Daniel's father clapped his son on the back, talking about hard work paying off. Olivia's kids were already asking for more pie. Dad flipped channels on the TV, barely glancing my way. I whispered, almost to myself, "I thought you'd like it." But the words drowned under the sound of laughter. I tried to smile, tried to pretend it didn't matter. But inside, something broke. That little spark of hope I'd been carrying, through the flight, through the dinner table, through every ignored word, it finally flickered out. I watched my mother lean into Olivia, laughing at something about Ella's Christmas recital. The warmth in her face was undeniable, but it wasn't for me. It hadn't been for years. And in that moment, I understood. No matter how much I gave, how carefully I chose my words, how hard I tried to be seen, I would never be enough for them. The frame sat untouched all afternoon, buried under piles of discarded wrapping paper. By evening, I found myself quietly slipping it into my bag, unwilling to leave it behind in a place where it clearly didn't belong. As I zipped the bag closed, a cold, steady thought formed in my chest. This was the last time. I'm done begging for a place at their table. The frame was still sitting on the coffee table, half buried under torn wrapping paper, when the front door swung open with a gust of cold air. "Hello, everybody." The familiar shrill voice rang through the house before I even looked up. My stomach tightened. Aunt Carol. She swept inside like she owned the place. Cheeks flushed from the December wind, a leopard print scarf looped around her neck, and perfume so sharp it lingered in the hallway like smoke. Mom rushed over immediately, arms wide, her face glowing in a way I hadn't seen all day. "Carol, you made it!" Mom's voice was thick with warmth, the kind she never seemed to find for me. Carol laughed, tossing her coat onto the banister. "Oh, you know I wouldn't miss it. Jacksonville traffic was awful, but we made good time. Where's my favorite niece and those perfect grandbabies?" She barely set her purse down before Olivia appeared, beaming, pulling Ella and Noah into Carol's orbit. The kids squealed as Carol bent dramatically to kiss their cheeks. "There's my smart little angel and my soccer star. You two grow more beautiful every year." The room swelled with laughter, chatter, the kind of warmth I used to dream of. I stood by the tree, invisible, the same air filling my lungs, but none of it mine. Finally, Carol's eyes swept the room and landed on me. She tilted her head, a smile curling that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, well, if it isn't Mariel, you look—" She paused, scanning me from head to toe. "Different." I forced a smile. "Hi, Aunt Carol. Merry Christmas." She stepped closer, her perfume making me dizzy. "Still out in Texas, aren't you? Marketing, wasn't it? I never really understood what you do all day." She chuckled, the sound sharp enough to cut. "At least Olivia's work is clear. Raising those kids, supporting Daniel. Real accomplishments." Olivia blushed, but she didn't protest. My lips parted, searching for words. "Actually, I was promoted recently." "Oh, promotions, titles." Carol waved her hand, her bracelets jingling. "You young people put too much stock in that. It's not the same as building a real family. That's what matters." The room was quiet for a beat. I felt every eye flick between us, waiting to see if I'd fight back. My chest burned. "Family matters to me too, Aunt Carol. That's why I'm here." She smirked. "Is that so? Funny, because I don't remember you being around much. Olivia's always here, always dependable. Meanwhile, you've always been the independent one, haven't you?" Her tone made the word independent sound like failure. Mom laughed lightly, as if to smooth things over. "Carol, don't tease her." But her eyes never left Olivia, and her voice didn't carry conviction. Carol wasn't done. "I mean, Mariel, remember when you were a teenager? You'd come down the stairs in those wrinkled clothes, hair a mess, and I'd think, goodness, Margaret's younger daughter just doesn't care about appearances at all." Olivia, on the other hand, was polished even at 14. The words struck harder than I expected. My chest tightened, heat rising in my face. I saw Dad chuckle softly, shaking his head like it was a funny old memory. Daniel smirked into his beer. I swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in my eyes. That was a long time ago. Carol leaned closer, her voice carrying across the room. "Some things never change." Laughter followed, small, careless, but enough. I clenched my fists under the table. For years I'd told myself her words didn't matter, that she was just bitter or cruel by nature. But tonight, surrounded by the people who should have defended me and didn't, it hit differently. Every laugh, every dismissive glance, it was like being erased piece by piece. Olivia, sensing the tension, piped up cheerfully. "Anyway, Carol, did I tell you about Ella's Christmas recital? She was the star of the show." Carol's face lit instantly. "Of course she was, just like her mother at that age." She turned back to me, her smile sharp. "You didn't sing, did you, Mariel?" "No, I remember. You always said the wrong notes." The laughter came again, rolling through the room. This time, I didn't try to smile. My throat burned, but instead of collapsing under the weight, a strange steadiness crept in. I picked up my glass of water, held it carefully, and said quietly, "Funny how people remember only what makes them feel bigger." For a second, silence. Carol blinked. Carol. Mom's voice broke this pause, nervous. All right, let's not get into old arguments. It's Christmas. But the moment had already cracked something open. I set my glass down, my hand steady. I came here hoping things would be different, but it feels like no matter what I do, I'll always be the punchline. The air in the room thickened. Olivia looked down, suddenly busy straightening Ella's bow. Daniel cleared his throat. Dad pretended to adjust the TV volume. Carol laughed, though softer this time. Oh, don't be dramatic, dear. We're just teasing. I looked at her straight on. No, you're reminding me exactly where I stand. For once, she didn't have a quick retort. The conversation stumbled forward, everyone eager to change the subject, to erase the awkward silence I'd created. But the damage was already done, on both sides. As the evening dragged on, I sat quietly, staring at the forgotten picture frames still lying under wrapping paper. My gift, my effort, my last attempt, all discarded in favor of someone else's nostalgia. And now, with Aunt Carol's words echoing in my ears, I knew something with painful clarity. They weren't just indifferent. They were comfortable keeping me small. By the time the night ended, I was no longer just hurt. I was done. By the time the laughter in the living room faded into late-night yawns, my body felt heavier than lead. The picture frame still lay abandoned under a pile of paper scraps, Carol's perfume still clung to the air, and my chest still throbbed with the words I hadn't said. I slipped upstairs with my overnight bag, hoping for a few moments alone. The hallway was quiet, lit only by a strand of colored lights Dad had taped along the railing. I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room. Well, not really a guest room, more like a hallway closet someone had shoved a mattress into, and pressed my palms into my knees, trying to breathe through the ache. A soft knock came at the door. Mom's voice followed. Mariel, can I come in? I swallowed hard. Sure. She stepped inside, arms crossed over her cardigan like she was bracing herself against the cold, or maybe against me. She didn't sit, didn't soften. Her eyes flicked to the half-zipped bag on the floor, then back to me. I need to talk to you about tomorrow morning, she said. I forced a small smile, searching her face for warmth. The gift exchange? Of course. I thought I'd make pancakes like I used to— No. The word landed sharp, final. I think it would be better if you didn't come. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. My chest tightened, and I let out a shaky laugh. I'm sorry, what? Mom sighed, her gaze darting toward the hallway as if she didn't want anyone else to hear. Carol's staying over. She brought gifts for the kids, and you know how things get when you two are in the same room. It's easier for everyone if you sit this one out. Her words sliced deeper than Carol's insults ever could. My own mother, asking me not to be there for Christmas morning. I whispered, So you're choosing her over me? It's not about choosing, she said quickly. It's about keeping the peace. Carol drove all the way from Florida. She's excited to be here, and I don't want drama in front of the children. My voice cracked. And what about me? Do you even hear yourself? You're telling your daughter, your own daughter, that she can't be here on Christmas morning because my aunt might get upset? Lower your voice, Mom hissed, glancing nervously at the door. Everyone's tired. Don't start something. I stood, my hands trembling. I'm not starting anything. I showed up. I brought gifts. I tried. And every time I open my mouth, you look past me like I don't exist. Now you're telling me I don't even get to sit by the tree tomorrow? Her jaw tightened. Mariel, don't be dramatic. You can see us another day. Maybe after Carol leaves. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Another day? Like my presence is a chore you'll squeeze in between entertaining your favorite daughter and your favorite sister-in-law? Don't twist my words, she snapped. They don't need twisting, I shot back. They cut just fine on their own. We stood in silence, the tension filling the tiny room. Her face softened just slightly, but it was the softness of pity, not love. You'll understand one day. Families are complicated. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall in front of her. Funny. I'm always the sacrifice. I grabbed my bag, yanking the zipper closed. Mom's hand lifted like she wanted to stop me, but she let it drop. Drive safe if you leave tonight. The roads might be icy. That was it. That was all I got. I brushed past her, the weight of the suitcase dragging at my shoulder, and headed down the stairs. The house was still humming with faint laughter from the living room, the glow of the tree reflecting in the windows. No one noticed me. Not Dad, not Olivia, not even Carol, still holding court with Daniel's parents. I slipped out the front door, the cold air hitting me like a wall. Snow crunched under my boots, the sound loud in the silence of the night. For a moment, I stood on the porch, staring at the house I had once called home. Behind those walls, my family was warm, comfortable together, and I was out here, again, with no room left for me. I drove to a nearby hotel, my vision blurry, my throat raw from holding back tears. The clerk at the desk greeted me with a smile warmer than any I'd seen all day. "Merry Christmas, ma'am. Checking in?" I nodded, my voice breaking. "Yeah, just one night." As I carried my bag down the carpeted hallway, something inside me shifted. The sting was still sharp, but beneath it was a steadier current, a realization that this was more than a bad holiday. This was a pattern, one that had repeated for years and was finally undeniable. In the quiet of that sterile hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blinking red numbers of the alarm clock. My phone buzzed once. Rachel checking in with a cheerful Merry Christmas Eve, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I pressed my palms together, whispering into the empty room, "I'm done. I can't keep forcing myself into a family that's happier without me." And for the first time, the thought didn't feel like surrender. It felt like the beginning of freedom. The hum of the heater filled the sterile hotel room as I dropped my bag on the floor and sank onto the edge of the bed. The clock glowed 12:47 a.m., red digits pulsing in the darkness like a heartbeat I couldn't quiet. I hadn't cried when I left the house. I hadn't even said goodbye. But now, in the silence, the tears finally came. Hot, angry, unstoppable. I pressed my fists against my eyes, whispering into the emptiness. Why isn't it ever enough? The bedspread smelled faintly of bleach, the kind of impersonal scent you could find in any hotel across America. And yet, this tiny, anonymous room felt more like home than my parents' house ever had. At least here, no one was waiting to laugh at me. No one would roll their eyes when I spoke. No one would tell me there was no room. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Rachel. "Merry Christmas Eve. Hope you survived the family circus." I stared at the screen, my throat tightening. She didn't know yet. No one did what had just happened. I typed and deleted 3 different replies before giving up, tossing the phone aside. The ache in my chest shifted into something sharper. The humiliation from earlier still burned. Carol's smirk, Mom's dismissal, the way everyone else had looked away. For years, I'd convinced myself I could win them over if I just worked harder, gave more, stayed quieter. But tonight the truth had been carved into me with brutal clarity. They didn't want me, they never had, and I was done begging. I stood, pacing the narrow length of the room, hands trembling with adrenaline. "No more," I whispered. My voice grew louder, steadier. "I'm not their afterthought. I'm not their sacrifice." I thought about the picture frame, still sitting abandoned on the coffee table. I thought about Mom's words, "It'll be easier if you're not here." And suddenly, something inside me hardened. "Fine," I said aloud, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My own face looked back at me, streaked with tears but steadier than I'd ever seen it. If there's no room for me in their family, then I'll build a life where there's always room for me. The decision felt terrifying and liberating all at once. I didn't know exactly what it meant yet, whether I would stop visiting, whether I would cut ties completely, but I knew this. Tonight was the last time I'd sit in a hotel room crying because my own family had shut me out. I lay back on the stiff mattress, pulling the thin blanket over me. The tears slowed, replaced by an unfamiliar calm. For the first time in years, I felt like the next step belonged entirely to me. Tomorrow they would wake up, exchange gifts, and carry on without me. and maybe they wouldn't even notice I was gone. But I would notice. I would remember this night as the moment I finally stopped waiting for their approval. As sleep tugged at me, I whispered into the darkness, almost like a vow. This is the last Christmas I spend chasing people who don't see me. From now on, I see myself. When I landed back in Austin after Christmas, the city felt different. Not because anything had changed. Traffic still crawled down I-35, the skyline still glimmered with glass towers at dusk, but because I had changed. Charlotte had chewed me up one last time, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I carried my suitcase into my small one-bedroom apartment, set it down by the door, and stood in the quiet. For the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like a blank page. The very next morning, I walked into my office with a fire I hadn't felt before. My coworkers noticed it too. "Mariel, you look different," Jenna from accounting said, handing me coffee. "Maybe I finally decided to stop apologizing for existing," I muttered, half joking, half serious. She blinked, then laughed. "Whatever it is, keep it. You look unstoppable." Unstoppable. I clung to that word. Work wasn't easy. Marketing is deadlines stacked on deadlines, clients who change their minds 3 hours before launch, campaigns that fall apart despite months of planning. Within weeks of getting back, one of my biggest projects collapsed. Our client pulled funding at the 11th hour. My boss called me into his office, his expression tight. "This isn't on you, Mariel," he said, rubbing his temples. "But I need you to pivot fast. We've got another campaign starting next week, and I want you leading it." I walked out shaken but determined. For years, I'd shrunk myself down at work the way I did at home, afraid to be too loud, too visible, too much. But now, I leaned in. I stayed late. I double-checked every detail. I learned how to push back on clients who thought they knew more than the team. And when that campaign went live, it smashed expectations. For the first time, my boss shook my hand with real pride. "You're the backbone of this department," he told me. The praise lit me up inside, but it also stung. My own family had never said words like that, not once, so I decided their silence would no longer define me. I made changes, small at first. I tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet, cutting out luxuries I once thought I needed, nights out, impulse buys, vacations that only left me drained. Instead, I funneled money into savings. Friends noticed. "You're really skipping Cancun this summer?" Rachel asked over the phone, surprised. "Yeah," I said, stirring a pot of cheap pasta on the stove. "I've got bigger plans." "Bigger than margaritas on the beach?" "Much bigger." Some nights were brutal. I'd sit in my apartment, exhausted, eating ramen while scrolling through photos of Olivia's kids on Facebook, the birthday parties, the vacations, the smiling faces surrounded by family. I'd cry sometimes, not because I missed them, but because I missed the idea of what they should have been. Then I'd close the app, wipe my eyes, and get back to work. Months turned into years. Slowly, the savings account grew. I said no to things I wanted in the moment to say yes to something larger, a future no one could take from me. By the time I turned 29, I was ready to look for a house. Not just any house, a place that felt like a declaration. My realtor friend, Dave, spent weekends driving me across Austin, showing me properties. "This one has character," he said, unlocking a small bungalow with peeling paint. "It has termites," I muttered, stepping back onto the porch. We both laughed, and he promised to keep looking. It took months, dozens of houses, countless disappointments, but then I found it. A 2-story home near Lake Austin with wide windows that flooded the kitchen in morning light and a backyard that felt like a sanctuary. The first time I walked in, my breath caught. The walls were bare, the floors scuffed, but I saw it immediately. This was mine. "I want it," I told Dave, before we even reached the second floor. He grinned. "Then let's get you the keys." The paperwork was grueling. Every form, every signature, every check of my savings was like proving I had built this from nothing. But when the call finally came, "Congratulations, Mariel, you're officially a homeowner," I broke down sobbing in my office parking lot. Not from stress, not from fear, but from pride. I moved in on a Saturday. My friends came with trucks and takeout boxes, laughing as we hauled furniture inside. We set up chairs by the empty pool and toasted with cheap champagne. "To Mariel," Rachel declared, raising her glass. "To building her own damn family." Everyone cheered, and for once, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like the center. That night, I lay in my new bedroom, staring out the window at the lake shimmering under the moonlight. My chest swelled with a peace I'd never felt before. For years, I'd begged for scraps of belonging. Now I had built belonging with my own 2 hands. But beneath the pride, a darker thought flickered. What would my parents say if they knew? Would they be proud, or would they be jealous? I rolled over, pulling the blanket tighter. For the first time, I didn't care. Their approval was no longer the currency I lived on. Still, I couldn't help imagining the phone call that would come one day. Mom's voice, sharp with shock. "You bought a house? How?" And me, smiling into the receiver, finally holding the power they had always denied me. I drifted to sleep with that image in my mind. Me, standing tall in the doorway of my own home, knowing that in this space there would always be room for me, for the people who loved me, for the life I had chosen. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this was only the beginning. The smell of barbecue drifted through the backyard as laughter echoed off the pool water. String lights glowed above the patio, swaying gently in the warm Austin evening breeze. My house, the house I had fought for, saved for, bled for, was alive with the sound of people who actually wanted to be here. Rachel clinked her glass against mine. "Look at you, Miss Homeowner," she teased, her eyes soft with pride. "I still can't believe you pulled this off." I laughed, shaking my head. "Sometimes I can't either. I keep expecting someone to tell me it's a mistake, that the keys weren't really mine." "Except they are," she said firmly. "You earned this. Every square inch of it." Her words landed deep. For years, I'd been the extra body squeezed into someone else's space, the girl asked to make room so others could feel comfortable. Now, people were gathering in my home, and there was space for all of them. Inside, my coworkers were crowding around the kitchen island, admiring the granite counters, filling plates with food. Dave, my realtor, was telling the story of how we'd almost lost the house to another bidder until I swooped in with a bold offer. Mariel didn't flinch, he said, grinning at me across the room. She wanted this place, and she wasn't leaving without it. Cheers rose, glasses lifted, and for a moment, I let myself stand still and absorb it all. The glow of the lights, the clatter of plates, the easy warmth. This was what belonging was supposed to feel like. Later, as the night stretched on, a few of us gathered by the pool. The water shimmered with the reflection of the lights, and someone put on soft music. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her voice thoughtful. "You know what I love most about this place? It feels like you. Bright, open, strong." I blinked, caught off guard. "You really think so?" She nodded. "Yeah. For so long, I watched you twist yourself into knots for people who didn't deserve it. And now, here you are, finally building a life on your own terms." Her words broke something open inside me. I swallowed hard, staring at the surface of the pool. I used to think if I just tried harder, they'd let me in. That one day, Mom would look at me the way she looks at Olivia. Rachel reached over, squeezing my hand. "And what if that day never comes?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Then I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Because I don't need their permission to exist. Not here. Not in my own home." The conversation faded into the night air, replaced by quiet contentment. Around me, friends laughed, someone toasted marshmallows over a small fire pit, and music hummed softly. I stood at the edge of the pool, looking back at the house, its windows glowing warm, the front door wide open, the laughter spilling out into the street. For the first time, I realized I didn't just own a house, I owned my life. And as I watched my friends gathered under the lights, I knew something with absolute clarity. Blood might make you related, but love made you family. And here, surrounded by people who celebrated me, I finally had both. The Monday after my housewarming party, I was still glowing. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink, empty bottles lined the counter, and my living room smelled faintly of charcoal and champagne. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt proud. Every mess was proof that people had come to celebrate me, to fill this house with laughter. That's when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Mom. My stomach clenched. For months, I'd barely heard from her, just the occasional obligatory happy birthday text, nothing more. I hesitated, then answered, "Hi, Mom." Her voice was oddly bright, almost rehearsed. "Mariel? Sweetheart, how are you?" "I'm good," I said carefully. "What's going on?" "Well," she began, dragging the word out, "we were all talking the other day, and we decided this Christmas would be perfect to come visit you." I blinked, nearly dropping the dish I was rinsing. "Excuse me?" "Your father, Olivia, Daniel, the kids, even Carol. We've all agreed it's time to celebrate in Austin. Warmer weather, the lake, the whole family together. Isn't that wonderful?" I set the dish down, my hands tightening on the edge of the sink. "You've already decided?" "Yes," she said quickly. "We've even looked at flights. The kids are so excited about seeing Texas. And honestly, honey, it'll be easier for everyone. More space, fewer long drives." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "More space? That's funny, because for years you told me there wasn't any room for me in Charlotte." Silence crackled on the line. "Mariel," she said finally, her tone dropping, "don't bring up the past. This is about family, about togetherness." I swallowed hard, my chest burning. "Togetherness? You told me not to come last Christmas. You let Carol's comfort matter more than mine. Now that I have something you want, suddenly it's all about family?" Her voice sharpened. "That's not fair. We've always cared about you." "Really?" My voice cracked, but grew stronger. "When? When you laughed while Carol humiliated me? When you told me to leave so everyone else could enjoy themselves? Or when my promotion was dismissed like it was nothing?" She didn't answer right away. In the background, I could hear Olivia's voice, muffled but insistent. "Ask her for the address." Mom cleared her throat. "Mariel, don't be difficult. We're your family. Of course we'll stay with you." The anger inside me crystallized into something colder, steadier. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "No, you won't." Her gasp echoed through the phone. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean you can't stay here. This is my home, my safe place, and I won't let it turn into another Charlotte." "Mariel, we've already packed our bags." "Then you should have asked before you did." The silence stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, Mom whispered, "You don't mean that." But I did, every word. "I'm not your backup plan anymore," I said, voice trembling but sure. "If you want to visit Austin, book a hotel, but you don't get to waltz back into my life just because I finally built something worth noticing." "Mariel," I cut her off, "I have to go." And I hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release. For the first time, I had said no. 3 days after that phone call, I was curled up on the couch with a book when the doorbell rang. It was a Saturday morning, gray clouds hanging low over Lake Austin. I wasn't expecting anyone. Rachel usually texted before dropping by, and Amazon packages rarely came before noon. When I opened the door, my breath caught. There they were. Mom, Dad, Olivia, Daniel, the kids bouncing excitedly between their legs. Behind them, Daniel's parents wheeling suitcases, Aunt Carol clutching her leopard print purse. 8 people stood on my porch like an invading army, luggage lined up neatly on the walkway. I froze, one hand still on the doorknob. "What are you doing here?" Mom's smile stretched wide, too bright. "Surprise! We decided to come a little early. Flights were cheaper this weekend." I glanced at the pile of suitcases, my stomach twisting. "I told you, you can't stay here." Dad chuckled like I'd made a joke. "Nonsense. There's plenty of room. Look at this place." He leaned sideways, peering into the living room. "You've got a hole upstairs, don't you?" Olivia stepped forward, Ella tugging at her sleeve. The kids are so excited to see Aunt Mariel's new house. You wouldn't turn them away, would you? Her words landed like a trap. I looked down at Ella's big brown eyes, then back at Olivia's expectant smile. I swallowed, my hands trembling. You should have asked first. You can't just show up and expect— Aunt Carol cut me off with a sharp laugh. Oh, come now. Don't be ridiculous. Family doesn't need an invitation. My chest burned. Family also doesn't slam the door on their daughter Christmas after Christmas. But you did. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. Mom's tone turned firm. Mariel, this isn't the time. Let us in. We've been traveling all morning. I stood taller, gripping the doorframe. No. The word hung in the air like thunder. Olivia's face hardened. You can't be serious. You have all this space and you're really going to be selfish? Selfish? My voice cracked, louder now. For 7 years you told me there was no room. You laughed while Carol tore me apart. You made me sleep in hotels, in spare corners, anywhere but home. And now that I have something worth noticing, you expect me to hand it over like nothing happened? Daniel scoffed. It's Christmas, Mariel. Don't make it about you. Something inside me snapped. I stepped out onto the porch, the cold air sharp in my lungs. It's always been about you. Your job, your kids, your stories, your comfort. Do you know what it feels like to sit in a room full of people who pretend you're invisible? To give and never be enough? The silence was heavy, broken only by Noah kicking at the step with his sneaker. Mom's eyes narrowed, her voice low. You're overreacting. You've always been too sensitive. I laughed bitterly. No, I've been too forgiving. Aunt Carol huffed. This attitude is disgraceful. You sound ungrateful, vindictive. I turned to her, steady now. Ungrateful? You called me fat at 15, stupid at 16, worthless at 20, and my parents defended you. Tell me, Carol, what exactly should I be grateful for? Her mouth opened, but no words came. Dad finally spoke, his voice tired. Mariel, we just wanted to spend time together. Then you should have thought of that before you told me to stay away. Before you let me walk out into the cold alone. You can't erase those years just because you're standing on my porch with a suitcase. Ella tugged at Olivia's sleeve again. Mommy, can we go inside? I'm cold. Olivia shot me a glare, then bent to zip up Ella's coat. This is cruel, she muttered. You're punishing the kids. No, I said firmly, my throat tight. I'm protecting myself. The words surprised even me, but they felt right. I stepped back into the doorway, gripping the handle. My voice was clear, steady. I don't have a room for you. Not anymore. The sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. Everyone froze, Mom's jaw tightening, Olivia's face flushed, Carol shaking her head. I didn't wait for more protests. I closed the door. For a moment, I leaned against it, my whole body trembling. Their muffled voices rose outside, confusion, anger, disbelief, but I stayed still. Minutes later, the sound of car doors slamming echoed down the street. When I peeked through the blinds, I saw them loading the suitcases back into the rental cars. Olivia's face was red, Carol gesturing wildly, Mom stone-faced beside Dad. Finally, the caravan pulled away, leaving my driveway empty again. I let out a long, shaky breath. The silence rushed in, thick and overwhelming. But it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. For the first time I had stood my ground, and though my hands were still trembling, my heart was steady. This house was mine, my life was mine, and no one, not even the people who shared my blood, could take that away again. By Monday morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications stacked one after another, and at first I thought it was work. Maybe the new campaign had gone viral overnight. But when I unlocked the screen, my chest tightened. It wasn't work. It was Facebook. Olivia had posted a family photo in front of my parents' tree back in Charlotte. Everyone was crammed together, smiles strained, the caption bitter enough to slice through glass. Christmas didn't go as planned this year. Sometimes selfish people forget what family really means. But we made the best of it. Family, first hatch disappointed but grateful. My stomach dropped. Within minutes, comments were rolling in from aunts, cousins, and family friends. "What happened? You all look upset." "Who was selfish? Is everything okay?" "So sorry your holiday was ruined, Olivia. You deserve better." Scrolling further, I saw Carol had chimed in too. "Some people only care about themselves once they have a little money. It's sad, really." My fingers clenched around the phone. My hands shook, not with fear this time, but with fury. Rachel called within minutes. "Mariel, have you seen Facebook?" "I'm looking at it now," I said through gritted teeth. Her voice was sharp. "They're trying to make you the villain, painting you like some cold, greedy witch." I closed my eyes, forcing down the lump in my throat. That's exactly what they want. To twist it so everyone pities them. There was a long pause before Rachel spoke again. "So what are you gonna do?" I thought about it. For years, I'd been silent while they wrote the story for me. I'd swallowed their insults, endured their dismissals, let them shape how others saw me. But now, I wasn't the girl begging for scraps of belonging. This time, I had my own voice. That night, I opened Facebook. My heart raced as I typed, every word like fire in my veins. For years, I was told there wasn't room for me in my parents' house at Christmas. I slept in hotels while others took my bed. I was ignored, dismissed, and asked not to show up at all. Now that I finally built a home of my own, suddenly there's room, but only if it benefits everyone else. Family isn't about convenience. Family is about respect, and respect is something I stopped receiving a long time ago. So no, I don't regret closing my door, because sometimes the only way to survive is to stop setting yourself on fire just to keep others warm. My finger hovered for a moment before I hit post. Almost instantly, reactions poured in. Friends from Austin commented first. "Proud of you, girl. You deserve peace. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival." Even distant cousins I barely knew messaged privately. "I always wondered why you weren't at Christmas. Makes sense now." The silence from Mom, Olivia, and Carol was deafening. No comments, no rebuttals, just their post and mine, two sides of the same story, out in the open at last. I leaned back in my chair, my chest still tight but lighter than it had felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't begging. I was telling the truth. And if the world chose to see me as selfish, so be it. At least they were finally seeing me. The night after my Facebook post, Austin was calm. The lake shimmered outside my window, reflecting the faint glow of the moon. My phone lay silent on the table. No new calls from Mom, no angry texts from Olivia, no sharp words from Carol. Just silence. And for once, silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the back patio. The air was cool, the kind of crisp December night Texas sometimes offered, without the bone-deep chill of North Carolina. I pulled a blanket around my shoulders and sat by the pool, listening to the soft hum of the city in the distance. For years, I had dreamed of nights like this, a space that was mine, untouchable, untainted by their judgment. Now it was real. Rachel came by a little later carrying a bag of takeout. She set it down and joined me by the water. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. I smiled faintly. "Lighter than I've ever felt, like I finally set something down I should have let go of years ago." She clinked her plastic cup against mine. "You didn't just set it down, you burned it to ash. That post? Legendary." I laughed, the sound surprising me with its ease. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. For the girl who used to cry in hotel rooms because she thought she wasn't worth a seat at her own family's table. Rachel's eyes softened. "And now? Now I know my worth doesn't depend on their recognition. I finally see myself the way I should have all along." We sat in companionable silence, the night wrapping around us like a cocoon. For the first time in decades, the weight of trying to belong to people who never wanted me had lifted. As Rachel left, I stayed outside, watching the stars flicker over the water, and I whispered to myself, steady and certain, "I am free." Looking back, I realize my story isn't just about rejection, it's about liberation. For so long, I believed family was something you had to endure, no matter how much it broke you. I thought if I just gave more, smiled harder, stayed quieter, they would finally see me. But the truth is, some doors will never open, no matter how gently you knock. And that's not your failure. I learned that love without respect is just control in disguise. I learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by who shows up for you, who listens, who celebrates you without conditions. Most of all, I learned that the moment you stop begging for a place at someone else's table, you can finally start building your own. I built mine here, in this house by the lake, surrounded by friends who chose me, not out of obligation, but out of love. And that, I've come to realize, is the truest form of family. So if you've ever felt invisible, unwanted, or small, please hear me. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. You deserve a life where there's always room for you. If my story touched you, please like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's remind each other that freedom starts with choosing ourselves.